Hello and welcome. I hope that you are all very, very well. Today I have some more book recommendations for you, of course. So today I'm going to be recommending some of my favourite short stories and short story collections. Now, many people this time of year, you're getting towards the end of the year, that Goodreads goal isn't looking so healthy. So short stories can come in handy. Maybe not some of these anthologies on my list, but some of the short stories will definitely be able to help you out there. I really enjoy reading short stories. I haven't actually read a huge number. When I was going through all the ones I have read to make this list, then there was the ones I have read I've loved. So it was quite hard from that perspective to narrow down to kind of a top 5. But it was quite a short list, so I'm hoping to read some more in the future. As always, I have some that I have read and then a few on my TBR to finish. So without further ado, let's get to the books. The first one on my list is Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. I read this only last month, I think. You may have already seen me talk about it on my October wrap-up. This is a set of short stories in the Argentinian tradition of Gothic horror and magical realism, and kind of the way that those are fused together in South American literature. I loved this collection. It was very dark, very unexpected in many ways. Lots of things happened that threw you off, that were unsettling, that were occasionally just downright gory, and all of that while having a bigger insight or commentary on society and the world that the characters live in. I was gripped from the very first story, but what I did think was unusual with this collection, I think usually when I've got a short story collection, I am tempted to read it like a normal novel and just read a few chapters at a time, even though they're all their own story, and after a while they sometimes sort of blur into one, or they feel it's quite hard to distinguish them, or you just kind of get bogged down in lots of new stories after a while. And what I really liked in this one is that didn't happen. That I would read one story and I would be like, that's enough for now, and then 2 hours later be like, right, back to the next one. So it was a really good one for that kind of, in that it actually felt like lots of short stories, and I'd had my fill after one. For now, I grazed on it. I was grazing. The next one on my list is Aiti by Roxane Gay, and this is her first publication. I think this was her first published book, and it is a series of short stories, as you would guess from the theme of these recommendations, about different people who live in Haiti or are descended from people who live in Haiti and Haitian culture, etc. It was very dark at some points in a sort of different way from Things We Lost in the Fire, in a much more real world way, but were also a sort of much needed, I think, insight into Haitian people and the Haitian diaspora and culture and things such as that, which I did not know anything about. On top of all of that though, the writing was just incredible. It was amazing. I mean, it's Roxane Gay. It's Roxane Gay, and that's what you expect, and she absolutely delivers. It's such a good selection of short stories, and they vary from kind of a few paragraphs to being a sort of longer narrative, so there's a really nice mix in there of things as well. The next one, and this book, like, it messed me up for a bit, gonna be honest. It's The Ghosts of Heaven by Marcus Sedgwick, and I'm also gonna add on to this a bonus story, which is Killing the Dead, also by Marcus Sedgwick, and I'll explain why in a moment. So Ghosts of Heaven is 4 short stories which are thematically connected, and although they're presented in chronological order of when they're set, then you can read them in any order because the themes crop up all through the different books, and you're sort of encouraged to read them in whatever order that you like, so that you can follow the narratives and themes through the different stories in different ways, which is just a fascinating approach. It's just so cool. It's so cool. The main theme through all of this is spirals, and the first short story is written in free verse, and I read it And I got to the end and I was like, spirals, 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 spirals. And I kind of carried that through with me for the rest of the book. And if I wasn't already sold by the final short story, then the chapter numbers for the final short story are in Fibonacci sequence because it's a numerical spiral. It was great. It was amazing. I loved it. So, Killing the Dead, where does that fit into all this? Killing the Dead is a World Book Day book, so a tiny little volume that was written by Marcus Sedgwick, and I don't know if it came out before or after Ghosts of Heaven. I think it might have come out before, and I remember buying it when it first came out because I was like, oh, Marcus Sedgwick, I love his books. He's got a £1 book. I'm going to read it. And I was kind of underwhelmed. I didn't really get it. And then I read Ghosts of Heaven and I realised that Killing the Dead, while it may not have the references to the other stories, it still has that like spiral theme at the centre of it. So in my head, that's like the 5th unofficial story to Ghosts of Heaven. The next 2 are just standalone short stories. They're not part of an anthology. And the first one is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. No one saw that coming. The Yellow Wallpaper is a classic story about a woman who has been confined to a room with ugly yellow wallpaper, and she slowly becomes mad and starts seeing things in the wallpaper, and I won't spoil the ending, but it's so creepy and so atmospheric, but also, because it's Charlotte Perkins Gilman, is also a commentary on the way that women's health is treated in society. So, tick from me. I first came across this, I think I was in like year 8 at school, and we studied literally just like the 1 paragraph or the 1 or 2 paragraph, like initial description of the wallpaper. And I remember being like, I need to read the rest of this story. But in 2007, 2008, when you're a 12-year-old who doesn't live walking distance from a Waterstones, it's quite hard to get your hands on a copy of a single volume short story that is definitely not in the part of a bookshop you usually look for. So, you know, it just kind of left my mind. And then I read it when it was released as part of the Penguin Little Black Classics. Loved it. What a great short story. For the last one on this list, I have deliberately avoided recommending volumes or stories that are part of like a wider universe, you know? So no kind of collected short stories in the world of because that's no use if you just want to read a collection of short stories. But I have made an exception for this one because it's just so good. It was just so good. And I think I would be interested to know if anyone has read it without reading the world it's from, what they think. And that is The Collectors by Philip Pullman, which is a short story in the His Dark Materials universe. Now, when it comes to the His Dark Materials extended things, we all know I have mixed feelings, okay? Lyra's Oxford was good, enjoyed that. Meh about the other short stories. The Book of Dust, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say on that. But The Collectors is incredible. It's a short story about, and I hope I'm remembering this correctly because it has been a couple of years since I read it. There's a portrait of a lady and a statue of a monkey. Anyone who has read or watched His Dark Materials immediately knows, yes, we know who these two people are and how they are connected. And the story follows people in our universe or a similar universe who are collectors, who are art collectors. And there's a legend around these 2 pieces of art, around this painting and this sculpture, that they always are reunited. So people will sell them separately or they will end up in different pawn shops or whatever, but they will make their way back together no matter the cost. They will be reunited through coincidences and fate and twisted happenings. These 2 pieces of art will always be reunited. And of course, there's a twist at the end. and it was just really, really great. So I would be really interested to see if someone read that having not read any of the His Dark Materials books, what they would think. Like, would they enjoy it as a short story in and of itself? Would it make enough sense? Because it's never explicitly said in the story that it's about Mrs. Coulter and the Golden Monkey. We are just left to make that connection ourselves, having read the other books. So if you hadn't read them, could you just enjoy it as a sort of story about two haunted pieces of art? I'll be intrigued to know. If anyone fancies reading it and letting me know, go for it. So those are 5 recommendations of short stories or short story collections that I have read. Now on to the TBR. The first up is Elixir, which is an upcoming anthology published by Hanson House. Full disclosure, I am an ARC reader for the publishing house, so I do get all of their new releases for review. But even if I didn't, this would be on my TBR. And they haven't, I've been sent it for review, not for promotion, so this is just me talking about it. So Hanson House, they're a very new publishing house, and they specialise in sci-fi, fantasy, LGBTQ books. All words and phrases that I enjoy. So Elixir is a series of short stories about sci-fi, fantasy, queer joy. What's not to love? What is not to love? So yes, I'm very excited to read it. I'm going to be reading it over the next couple of months, so I will let you know what I think. Having literally just said that I have been trying to avoid books that are part of a wider universe, I'm going to go back on that right now. The next one on my TBR is A Blink of the Screen by Terry Pratchett. There are some other collections of Terry Pratchett's short stories out there, mostly aimed at children, and I think this is the majority of his sort of short stories aimed at adults in this one. And not all of them are Discworld, so I think the first half of the book is non-Discworld short stories, and then the second half is Discworld short stories. Now, I have never read a Discworld short story. I know. Not even Trollbridge. I haven't read a single one of them. It's the only Discworld I have left, apart from 2 of the science books. So I kind of want to savour it, but also I want to read it, so I've read all of Discworld, so I can experience it. So yes, this is another one on the list. And then last of all, we have The Canterville Ghost, The Happy Prince and Other Stories by Oscar Wilde. I've read a little bit of Oscar Wilde. I've read The Picture of Dorian Gray, I've read Salome, and I've read An Ideal Husband. And I mean, he's Oscar Wilde. Everything he writes is amazing. Hilarious, witty, insightful. So yes, I'm looking forward to reading this. I think there are a fair few short stories in this one. I think there's sort of 3 collections in one. So yes, I'm looking forward to expanding my Oscar Wilde repertoire in the near future. Thank you very much for joining me in today's video. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, give it a comment. Let me know if you have any short story recommendations or anthology recommendations for me. I look forward to seeing them. I hope that you all have a very, very lovely day, and I will see you next time. Bye!